Why don't we go back to your question? And
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
and
I was curious. We asked President Castro about political prisoners,
and he basically doubted whether there were any in this country, or claimed that there weren't any in this country, and then asked us to provide him with a list. I guess the question should be, and I didn't ask this fully further a while ago, but does the administration believe that the government does currently hold political prisoners in Cuba, and is there a list that the administration has?
Yeah, look, I've shared many such lists with the Cuban government over the course of my 2.5 years now, I guess, of dealing with them. In the course of the talks leading to normalization, we shared a list of 53 prisoners who they released around the December 17th announcement. In the run-up to this visit, a number of the cases that we've been addressing with them were resolved in some fashion, whether that was people who'd been released who were not permitted to travel, some of them being able to travel, or whether there were several cases related to those 53 individuals that were resolved, and some of those people actually chose to come to the United States. However, there are certainly additional prisoners whose names we raise on a regular basis with the Cuban government. The fact of the matter is, Jim, I think the heart of the difference with President Castro is not their lack of awareness of these individuals and how we follow their cases and how independent organizations follow their cases. It's their belief that they are not political prisoners, that they are in prison for various crimes and offenses against Cuban law. And what we have said, again, in Cuba or in any country around the world, is if someone is detained, imprisoned for a fundamentally nonviolent political offense, like expressing yourself, like demonstrating freedom of assembly, that those people inherently are in prison for political purposes. And it's unjust, therefore, under international principles, for those detentions to be carried forward. So we certainly do continue to have individual cases that we raise of people who are in prison here in Cuba for those types of offenses. I think the basic difference is the Cuban government's rejection that they're not in prison for violating their laws, and our belief that either their laws or their practices, again, crack down on certain types of behavior that we believe should be allowed in every country. I would say that the government has shifted in recent years from an approach of long-term detention of individuals to more short-term detentions. And so what you see is this cycle of people protesting and then being detained for a short period of time, then released, and that cycle continues to play out. So there has been some change in terms of the long-term detained individuals and a reduction in that number. However, there are still people that we follow their cases, we raise their cases with the government, we share lists with the government, just as we also raise concerns over the short-term detention practices.
and if I may follow up, since he seemed to issue this
And do you feel any need to say, well, here's another list? Did anybody have that conversation following the press conference, or did you see that sort of bluster? Or
no, look, there is very rarely an engagement in which we're not raising either lists or individual cases. That will certainly be the case going forward. And again, I think the disagreement and difference that that conversation raises is simply their rejection of the notion that those people are political prisoners.